Hello and welcome back. In this tutorial, I want to go over how to use the Bootstrap grid classes in our WordPress theme. So in the last video, we installed Bootstrap into our theme. So now it's time to start using all the Bootstrap classes in our WordPress theme to get it looking good. So if you go into CSS, first go to getbootstrap.com, then go to CSS, and then you go to grid system. Bootstrap offers a pretty robust grid system, and it's one of the main reasons why I use it and a lot of people use it, is so they can use this grid system, which helps them, organize their site on different devices. So all the way from small devices, phones, to tablets, to desktops, to large desktops. So you can read through here and kind of see what's going on, but I'm going to show you how to use this grid system. Alright, so let's jump over to our theme. So in our theme files, I'm going to go to the index file right here. And the first thing we want to do, if you read over Get Bootstrap, it talks about these containers. So you have a container that has a responsive fixed width, and then you also have this container fluid, which is a full width container. So I'm going to put mine in just a regular container, but you can play with container fluid as well. So let's do that. So in the index.php, I'm going to do a div container, and then I'm going to take this closed div tag, and what we're going to do with this container is we want to wrap. Let's see here. I'm going to put some widgets in here first so I can kind of show you what's going on. Pages, recent post, search. So right now we have our content area, which is our post, and then we have the widget areas, which are underneath. So we want a container that wraps both our content area and our widget area, so we can kind of have our content on one side and our sidebar on the other. We may do some other templates where you have the full width template and stuff like that, but for now we're going to do just the default blog layout that you traditionally see on WordPress themes. So in order to do that, back in our theme files, this container also needs to wrap the sidebar. So we don't want to go down here and do the close the div tag. That just looks kind of weird. What we can do is go into sidebar here, and then we'll put our closing div right there. So let's save that so you can kind of see what's going on. Also save the index file. I'm going to clean it up here a little bit. Save that. Alright, so let's go and reload our front end now. And if you inspect this, right click, inspect element, you can see here our container is wrapping everything here. You can see that it closes. That's why I like to leave that comment in there so you can see that it's the correct closing div. So open that up. We have our primary area and also our widget area. Nice. Alright, so now we can go over to Get Bootstrap and actually get into the grid system. And this is where we use these classes here. Call small and call medium and call large, depending on what you want it to look like in each device. So let's go ahead and do that. Here I'm going to add call medium, let's do an 8, and that means in our sidebar it's a 12 grid system. Bootstrap has 12 columns, so everything that you do in a grid system needs to equal up to 12. So if that's an 8 in our sidebar over here, we need to do a 4, call medium 4. Save that. And then when we refresh our front end over here, there you go. You see that it adds it over there to the right hand side. So if we inspect our elements here again, you can see here call medium 8 has a width of 66%, and then our secondary call medium 4 has a width of 33%. So you can see here what happens as you scroll down. once it gets to a certain width, it drops down into a single column. So if you want it to stay over here, all the way down to a small device, you can add the other columns. Call extra small, do a 6. We'll do a 6 and 6 so it always stays even. Something like that. Save those files, refresh. And as we scroll down, you see that it always stays as a 6. So I normally just play with the medium unless I have a certain design that needs something to stay in a column for a mobile phone. And then once it gets small enough, it just starts going to a single column. So I like that look. You may want to play with it. But yeah, that pretty much gets that down. So let's play with the header and the footer area as well. Oh, one thing before we go to the header and footer though. Say you remove all of your widget areas. What's going to happen? Hopefully stuff stays the same. Let's delete all these. Delete. And once we refresh, it looks good, but actually when you inspect the element and you go in here and you look at your container, you can see that the closing div is content. So we got a problem here. We don't want, that means it's the wrong closing div. So if you think about it, what it's doing is it's going, in our index file, it's getting all this stuff and it's also getting our sidebar. But once it goes to our sidebar, it says there's this if statement right here that says if there's no active widget areas in the sidebar, then just leave. That's what that return does. It says just go. So that means none of this gets seen, which has our closing container div. So what we can do here is add a closing div up here. We need to see what I'm doing here. So this is a PHP tag, a PHP if statement, if this condition, and then it opens these brackets, and inside that if statement is this return. So in order to put HTML inside PHP, we need to close these PHP tags. So close it, and then we can reopen it down here. Something like that. And then we need to put our closing div tag up here. So now what it's going to do, we can actually put this on one line so you can kind of read it a little bit better. I don't know, you can kind of mess with it. It's kind of a weird markup there. But now it's going to do this if statement. If there's nothing that's active in the sidebar, then close our div, and then once the div is closed, then return. So let's see if that works. So let's refresh here, inspect our element again, find our container, and then you can see here that the closing div is correct. It's the container div. So let's just make sure, let's add some more widget areas back in here. Make sure everything's still working as it should. Open that up, and there we go. Container still has a closing. Perfect. Alright, so now let's move on to the header and footer. So let's open up our header file here, and you can see here that we have a page. That page doesn't close until we get to the footer. You can see here that closing div's there, so we don't want to put our container on the outside of that. What we can do though, you see our header, and we have this skip to the content link, which I normally remove, but you may want to keep it. But I'll keep it for now. So div container, open that up, and put it down here. I'm going to indent those. Save that and refresh. So it looks good. Notice I didn't use any grid classes yet. and you'll see that it runs into a problem if you don't use grid classes. So here's my container. You see that it's centered everything, but as you go smaller, there's this space right here, and that's because the actual, well, I shouldn't say space, it's not aligned correctly. That's because if you inspect it, let's open this up a little bit. If you inspect this element, this call medium 8 actually gives it a little bit of padding on the left hand side, whereas our header, it has that padding. Containers have padding, and then the columns have padding as well. So right up here we only have the container padding. So what we can do for now, you may have a 2-column header where you have your logo over here and then you have some kind of call to action over here, but for now we do not have that. So what we can do is just wrap this thing in the column classes. Call medium 12, do something like that for now. Indent that again. So now we got it in line and looks good. So we can do the same thing for the footer as well. So in our footer, I'll wrap this in a container. Oops. Container, and then right here we can do call medium 12. So 12, of course, is just makes it go full width. And there we have it. So as we get smaller, everything stays in line. As we get bigger, our columns start working out. One problem that you might run into of wrapping the container is, say that you want a full background color to go from edge to edge. So for example, let's do the header. So in here we have this header right here, site header. Let's go into our CSS here and just add a quick style, site dash header background color red. Alright, save that. Refresh the page. Hard refresh. See, you notice here that it's combined inside this container. So what you can do is actually just move our container around a little bit. So see, I wrapped everything within here. What we can do though is take this container and put it inside the header, just like that, and also take these and put it inside the header. And then I'm going to clean this up a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Alright, so we have the header on the outside, and then we have our container, and then we have our grid class. So if we save that and we refresh, we still have the same look with the columns inside, but now our background color goes the full width. So you may want to do the same thing with the footer as well. Instead of putting that container on the outside of the footer, maybe you want some full background color. We'll just put it inside the footer here, and then we'll need to take that grid class. We can put it on inside the site info, or you can create another div just for that grid class as well. So let's get that back, save that, and it's going to look the exact same, but if you inspect, you actually notice that the footer is on the outside and then it goes in the container. So that's a cool little trick if you're looking for that full background color or an image or whatever you might be trying to do. Alright, so let's move on to the inner pages. So if you click on an actual single post, you notice that nothing's styled correctly. That's because we've only put our grid classes on our index page. So now what we need to do is actually go into single. If you remember back from our first video or our first few video, we can determine what page this is by inspecting the element and then looking at the body classes, and I can see here that I get a pretty good idea that this might be the single layout, single post, considering it says single 3 times up here. So let's go ahead and add this as well. So notice that this uses the sidebar, get sidebar. So that means our container class is already going to be closed. So all we need really is just the opening container. Single, the opening container there. I like to indent this once. And then we need our column class, medium 8. So here you can, maybe you want the single page to have a different look than the index page, but if I refresh that, there we go, it looks similar to the index page. We have our single, and we have our sidebar over here on the right hand side. So now we can click into the sample page maybe. We have the same issue. So if you can kind of put it together a little bit, what I'm doing is just going through all the page templates and then adding our classes to it. Adding our custom container. Don't need that closing div. And then call medium 8. So with Sass, I know I keep bringing up Sass because I like it so much, but you can actually, I could target this content area in my Sass files and automatically apply this call medium 8 to it. And I wouldn't have to continue to duplicate this code over and over again on each one of these page templates, but we'll get to that at a later point. Alright, so we got that page looking good. Let's go back to the home page. We need to look at the archive pages and stuff like that. So if I go into uncategorize, you can see here that I still have the issue. Inspect. What page am I on here? Looks like either archive page or maybe a category page. Since I don't have a category layout here, it's more than likely an archive page. So I guess that it actually is. I'm not really guessing. I'm just trying to help you figure out what page it might be. Call medium 8 there. Gonna indent this. Save that. Refresh. Alright, that's looking good. Another thing we can look at, let's do hello. Let's look at the search results. Search results page, not looking very good. Look at the body class here. More than likely going to be search. Here we go. Same thing. Div. Container. Call medium 8. Indent. See if that worked. Looks good. Alright, the only thing I can think of now is like to do a 404 page, put some junk in the URL, and it looks like it's messed up. So we can go, let's look at the body class. Error 404. Doesn't really give us the page layout here, but you can tell that it's error for 404, and we do have a 404 page, so let's put our container on here. So notice on this page it doesn't have the sidebar widget, so we actually need to wrap this whole page in our container, close it down here, and then in our primary we can just make this a full width, call medium 12. And when we reload that, you can see that it goes full width. You can play around in here, put some grids inside of a grid, and maybe you line those into 3 columns, recent post, use categories and archives or something like that. But I'll leave that up to you. You can also create a custom 404 page. Notice here that I have this error. I just noticed if I go in the console, Oh, you can just see my 404 not found. It's always a good idea to, once you're open Inspector, to see if you have any errors right here, and you go to the console and read what it says. Sometimes, maybe your jQuery isn't working or something like that. I'll circle back around on that once I see another error pop up there. I'm sure there will be some more as we move along. So with that, I'm thinking footer, functions, header, page. We edited all of our current pages that we have and added the Bootstrap grid to it. So I'm going to end this tutorial here. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave something in the comment box and I'll get back to it. I think in the next tutorial we're going to move on to maybe putting in the Bootstrap menu and start styling some things up a little bit more. So I'll see you then.